Good day. My name is Lee Thennes, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the interim superintendent for the Manitowoc Public School District. I've been a resident of Manitowoc since 2001. I was a social studies teacher at Lincoln High School from 2001 to 2011. I left for a short time to become an associate principal at Sheboygan North High School from 2011 to 2015, at which time I returned to Manitowoc and became the principal at Wilson Junior High. I served Wilson for 2 years, and then I was asked to become the principal of Lincoln High School, which I did that job for 7 years. Transferred into a central office position of curriculum director last year, and now in the capacity as serving as interim superintendent. I want to give you a disclaimer up front that recording something like this is not an easy thing for me to do, and there's likelihood that I'll make errors or mistakes or get caught up a little bit. But I got to tell you, if I had to do new takes every time I screwed up, I'd probably be here till next week, Thursday. So I'm planning to just kind of go through this in one take and apologize for any errors or slip ups that I may have. But just want to make sure I give that disclaimer out front on this. We began having conversations here this fall in October with all of our buildings and their staff, stakeholders around the situation that we find ourselves in with our facilities. There's a number of different variables involved in that, and my goal is through this presentation, which we did deliver to the public. I believe it was last week, Wednesday, on October 23rd. I believe was the day of the presentation. We held it at Washington Middle School. You're essentially going to get that presentation a little slightly condensed so you don't have to listen for so long. And then what I would just do is I would encourage you to reach out with any questions you may have directly to me or any of our directors, which we can be reached by finding our contact information on our school website. This presentation and the slides will also be able to be found there if you wanted to review them outside of the recording of this presentation. So again, thanks for taking a few minutes of your day to become educated on where we're at with the district in regards to our facilities and some other things that we're going to be facing over the next several years and beyond. The first thing I want to do is start by just talking a little bit about what great things we have to offer our students. I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, a very small place called Cooks, Michigan. I went to Big Beatty Knox School District and graduated from there in the late 90s. And then I went to Northern Michigan, and I got my first teaching job here in Manitowoc in 2001. And right away, what struck me, and I wasn't planning on sticking around here. I was going to probably go back to the UP, but what caught me right away was the real educational opportunities that we have in this area and region comparatively to what I had growing up. I was in a school that had only, my graduating class was only 22 students. And so as you can imagine, I didn't have near the opportunities as our kids do here today. And so once I began to learn about those opportunities, I recognized quite quickly that this would be a place where I want to put down some roots and raise a family. So really what I want to do is begin by thanking all of you for having a hand in that. Your contribution and investment into our public school districts has yielded me two great kids. My daughter Samantha is a senior at Lincoln High School. She loves the arts. She's in choir. She's got a YA job. She's very excited about her future and feels college ready, which is a blessing to our family. My son, who's a junior, Carter, he's a three-sport athlete. He is very involved in school as well, and also has a YA job this year. So, from the parents' perspective and lens, the Manitowoc Public School District in this community has done a great deal to help the success of my children. And it's very important for me to not only carry that tradition on, but also enhance it as we move forward for our future generations of kids growing up in the Manitowoc area. And as you'll see on this slide, we have some achievement scores rising. Our college and career pathways are better than they ever have been, and we're leaders in the region. We have a ton of kids getting college credit that saves their parents money through our school, options that we have, like Rising Phoenix and Early College Now. On the work side of it, we have 161 youth apprentices in our community working for our businesses and learning about crafts that they may or may not be interested in long term in their careers. As you already know, we have a wonderful arts program, strong sports programs that offer many opportunities for our kids beyond the classroom. And those are real special things that I wanted to start with because it's only through the generosity of really our taxpayers over the last several years, through operating referendums, that we've been able to continue the level of programming that we have for our children here. And it is really a special place to raise a family. Now, getting into that was all the fun we're going to have today. Now it kind of gets into some more serious things. The old adage, misery loves company, would apply here. Many public schools in the state of Wisconsin are meeting some of the same challenges that we do. Inadequate state funding, declining enrollment, and outdated and aged school buildings. Right now, as I mentioned just prior, we are also have been operating with the generosity of the taxpayers with some operational referendums that have been consecutive that we've used really to help maintain the level of our programming and staffing in the district. So what does all that have to do with buildings? Well, the fact of the matter is it really starts and ends with state funding. The state, many moons ago, promised that they would fund special education reimbursements at 2/3. Currently, we only receive 30% of that promise. What does that mean? It means that it's like $3 million a year difference in our budget because we're not receiving the adequate and promised funding that the state has given us. The challenge that I have with that, and I get it when times are tight, but the challenge that I have with that particular state of reality in which we live is the fact that we have currently 3.1 billion, that's a B, projected surplus in this budget that we're currently in the state. In addition to that 3.1 billion, there's 2.1 billion sitting in our rainy day fund. What that says to me is we can afford to fund our promise. And if we could afford to fund our promise, we would have to come to you less for the investments, for example, in our operations referendum. Did you know that on the ballot here in this election in November, there's 121 referendum questions, including some of our friends from Michigan and Sheboygan and other area districts. 121 districts are asking questions, or at least there's 121 questions. It may be slightly less in terms of districts. But the bottom line is there's only 430 districts in the state of Wisconsin. So what that means is many of the community schools are needing to go to their local tax base to do capital improvements or even operational referendums in order to keep the level of programming where it is. I don't know about you, but as a taxpayer, I don't love being doubly or triply taxed for things, which in my opinion is what's happening here. So if you want to do something about that, I'd say contact your local representatives and urge them to fund schools, at least as far as the reimbursement for special education services to the 2/3, or we would take 60%, to be honest, so that we can fill the gaps a little bit. That $3 million would go a long way in helping us reduce the amount that we have to ask you for operations. Another issue that we're currently facing is declining enrollment. As you'll see right here, we have projected estimates. We had about 5,300 students in 2005, 2006. Currently, we're at 4,600, and we're projected to get down as low as 4,200 by 2030 and 2031. The issue with declining enrollment is also a big one in the state because it's happening in most districts. Manitowoc is maybe being impacted a little bit more. We're one of the oldest counties in the state in terms of age. And as you know, the older you get, the less likelihood of having children. So, this is something we don't get to control, and it's something that's happening in our community. The other issue I think that I would bring up around declining enrollment is the fact that we've seen an increase since COVID in the number of students that are seeking to get their education in other public schools in the county, or for that matter, in the state online. We're also seeing a increase in the number of school vouchers students that are leaving our district to attend the private schools. Now, let me be clear. I'm very much in support of parents having a choice to send their kids anywhere. But where it leaves me scratching my head a little bit is with some of these, why not us? For example, did you know that there's 123 students currently that live in the Manitowoc attendance area that attend Valders Area School District? To me, that's a lot considering I think they only have like 900 or 1,000 so students. So when you look at that, that's a big chunk of our kids that are adding to their enrollment. And they would do a great deal of help to us if they chose to come here. So one of the things I'm going to be doing over the next several months is putting together a group that's really working on trying to figure out why. So I'm going to send surveys out to families who either are choosing to leave our district to go elsewhere, to find out why and what we could do to maybe get them back. The second thing I'm going to do is we have over 100 kids that choose to come from other districts to us. So the other question I want to ask them is, why do you choose us? Because as I said before, my children have grown up in this district, gotten a good education, provided a ton of opportunities. So my daughter's in a college class right now, which will help save costs for us as we send her to college next year. My son is also, getting some of those advantages. So we just got to make sure that our community and our county and the folks that live in our community understand and know the benefits that we bring to them, but also find out what we can do better. Because if we're not asking that question, then we're not going to address perhaps some reasons why people are choosing to attend elsewhere. With less kids, we also are noticing extra capacity in our schools. So excess capacity and academic benefits were major reasons why we did realign our K-12 levels in 2019 and 2020. We brought Lincoln High School freshmen for the first time since the 1930s, and we added kindergarten to our elementary schools. Because of some of the conditions of our facilities and the age of some of them, the district decided that they needed to do a comprehensive study on facilities. So they enlisted the help of CISA 10 for that. And CISA worked with us to develop what a 10-year capital improvement plan could look like. Also helped us study a bunch of different things in a larger facilities report. We also chose at that time to add $500,000 to our annual district maintenance budget to try to help offset some of the costs that we knew were going to be coming our way with our buildings in the shape that they're in. The detailed facilities report, which is also available online, was several hundred pages long. There's a bunch of information in there. It takes each school, goes school by school, and identifies facility needs and categorizes them into three categories: those that would be required in 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, and 5 to 10 years. Of course, these projects prioritize things like safety and security, both traffic related, kind of getting kids in and out of school safely, structural issues like indoor air quality, environmental health, ADA requirements, studied the use of our energy district-wide, reviewed enrollment trends and declining birth rates. And it really provided us with a nice analysis of the space that we have and what capacity we may have in some of our schools. I don't have to tell you that we have aged buildings. Let's just take Washington, Wilson, and Lincoln as examples. Washington and Wilson are in their 80s, almost 90. And we have Lincoln High School, which of course is now going to be in January celebrating its 101st birthday. You know as well as I do, buildings have life expectancies. Districts are dealing with this all over the state. What happened over the years was because we weren't getting the state funding that was anticipated, districts were forced to make choices, and choices came to: do we fund the maintenance needs of our buildings, or do we continue to have teachers in the lower class sizes teaching kids and providing them with the programming that they need to be successful? These choices were pretty universal across the state, and the response was also mostly universal, which is, let's take care of our kids and their education, and we'll cross our fingers hoping that the state will fund education at the level in which that is promised. Well, the fingers are still crossed after many, many years of that not happening. And as a result, you're seeing more and more communities go to referendum for capital improvements because the maintenance budgets just aren't covering what's needed. Some of the things the study found across the district were indoor air quality issues. These were HVAC, equipment failures, things at the end of their useful life. I'll just give you an example. I was doing a facilities presentation on the day that they fired up the boilers at Jackson Elementary School, and frankly, there's two of them, and one of them wasn't working. So we have a lot of these types of issues in the district. We also have concerns about potential asbestos and lead. Traffic patterns, pedestrian incidences happen occasionally in our district because of the way things are set up. We have to look at how we configure staff parking and student pickup and all of those things in relationship to our school buildings, in particular our elementary and middle schools. Structurally, we have a couple of swimming pools that are not functioning at the middle school level right now. The Washington gym is actually physically sinking into the ground. Wilson and Lincoln Towers we got some stay away tape around the Wilson stack, just concerned about what might fall, which are major issues for us. There are two old abandoned coal storage areas at Washington and Wilson that also need to be addressed. Egress issues in buildings. A couple of examples of that would be the stairway safety, Jackson cafeteria, and the Jefferson Rotunda area. If you're looking at what are some examples of projects that we need to get done soon? Well, the answer to that is these are pretty universal across buildings, so I'm not going to get super specific with buildings. We have student pickup, traffic, and pedestrian safety issues. We have walls and structural issues that require tuck pointing, windows, roofs, doors, ceilings, floors, our electrical main services, emergency generators, lighting inside. LED lighting could also save us operationally because it lasts longer and it's less expensive. Existing HVAC and plumbing systems, tech ed, space deficiencies, and as I mentioned before, ADA issues with elevators, ramps, and bathrooms in many of our schools. According to the facility study that was completed, we're looking at the 1 to 2, 3 to 5, and 5 to 10 year projects by school building. And as you'll see, when you're looking at this, the price tag at the bottom right-hand corner is your total. Now, let me remind you that this is nothing to do with any options or recommending of replacing any of the schools. These prices are about making the school buildings we have up to par to last a little bit longer. I would point you in the direction, just as an example of this, of Washington and Wilson, our two middle schools. Washington's estimated at 28 million, Wilson at 26 million. And I want to be clear with you, the improvements in these areas would really just extend the life of those buildings another 20 years or so. Would still require major repairing. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do a comprehensive survey that will be given to all residents of this district to help guide us in their thinking around some of these questions that we have in regards to the things we're talking about in these presentations. Choices like, do you fix Washington and Wilson for another 20 years for that price tag? Or do you consider building a new middle school and combining them since we have extra space? Um, Similar questions around consolidation of elementary schools that could be part of the options. What I would tell you is that we have to just be very careful that we're investing money initially in projects in our buildings that we know are going to be around. So I'm going to get into talking about some critical maintenance needs in the district and how we're going to approach that in a little bit. But I just kind of wanted you to see with this slide, really what we're talking about. And I will also add, the 161 million in improvements does have some items that some people may consider nice to have and not gotta haves. What I would tell you is based on this and in conversations I've had with CISA 10 and their outlook, we're probably like, if you wanted to know the gotta do type list, it's probably around that $120 million range. And so some of this we could push off or don't do, based on the fact that it's nice to have versus gotta haves, which, by the way, we'll be also asking questions about in our survey. So this is the lay of the land and what we're looking at in terms of their recommendations. Obviously, we have our folks working off this list to help us develop what our next steps are. When we're talking about money like that, we have to talk about what options we have to pay for things. School district basically has these four things, and I'm just going to try to explain them in simplest terms as possible. We have our Fund 10 general operating budget. This is like our checking account. This is what our major budget is for the year. It's what we expect to spend and on what. What I would tell you is that this year's budget was a little bit tight, but it did come in balanced. We did need to use a bit of our fund balance to balance that budget. One of the challenges we face as a district with our maintenance is over the years, we've sliced the maintenance budget to the tune of we're at about 1.2 million for ongoing maintenance needs. According to our CISA 10 report, our district should be budgeting between $5 and $6 million based on our assets and what we have as a footprint in our district. One thing that I will tell you is we have a lot of work to do to get our facilities back up to par. One promise that I would make to you, as long as I'm here, is that we will work on making sure that our Fund 10 budget is set up to take care of the things that we have so that these types of costs don't happen where we're, you know as well as I do, in your home, if you let a little problem go, it can quickly turn into a big problem. And typically big problems in houses cost big money. And that's really what we're talking about here. We also have Fund 46. I'd like you to think about this as like a checking account. This is an opportunity for us to set aside monies and put into this fund to only be used for capital improvement projects. So let me give you an example of what we might use this fund or how we might use this fund. Let's say that, we're self-insured, which means, we make payments on claims of medical insurance. There's good years and bad years on the usage of all that. Let's say we have a good year and it comes back that we have several $100,000 or even $1 million that we could potentially put aside. We've been trying to put money into Fund 46 because putting money in there that's excess, or if we do a good job of saving money operationally, putting the money in there provides us the opportunity to take care of some of these maintenance needs without having to have the taxpayers fund those, which we want to make sure we're also looking at options for that. Fund 38 is a type of borrowing, which allows the district to essentially go out and get a loan. Let me use it as an example. It would be like you going to your bank and saying, I need to buy a new car. Can you pre-approve me for a loan? Yep, you have your loan. You go buy your car. About a month later, you start making payments for your car out of your checking account. For us, that's Fund 10. I got good and bad news about our situation with debt. The good news is we don't have any. We're one of very few school districts that currently don't have any debt. The bad news is that we don't have any debt, which means currently we're not making payments on debt, which out of your checking account, if that's just getting balanced, you know as well as I do, it's got to fit into a budget, which it can be challenging if you have no debt payments currently that you're making that you can begin assuming more or even replace with. So many districts use planning ahead to have small amounts of debt that get paid off over time with others then coming on after to really just kind of maintain a solid payment of debt, which we don't have. And we can be grateful that we don't have debt. It just makes it a challenge to pay for it out of the checking account, so to speak. There's also another type of borrowing. It's called Fund 39 borrowing. Um, this is voter approved borrowing. And let me explain the difference between Fund 38 and Fund 39. This is like you going out, going to the bank and saying, I need that loan for that car, going and buying the car, and then having someone else make the payments for you. That someone else in our case would be the taxpayers, and they would be basically through the levy, they would be assessed whatever that amount is to pay the borrowing off for that amount of years of the borrowing. So these are sort of our mechanisms of funding. One thing I want to talk about with the funding is, and this is going to be a very key important thing to remember and really educate the community on, is you're very used to us asking you for money. We've had to do it like the last 10 years in these, short-term recurring operational funds. Operations are used for Fund 10. That's paying staff, that's having programs, that's buying curriculum, that's some of the maintenance needs. The bottom line is that you've been very generous over the years with that. The other type of referendum is capital improvement referendums. And I need to be clear with you that Manitowoc Public School District has not asked its public for bricks and mortar monies since 2005. That was the last time it asked for money, and it was a really small amount of money because I don't know if you remember, it's been that long ago, almost 20 years. We didn't have a school lunch program. We currently do. That referendum took care of kitchen needs and things in buildings to make sure we had the capacity to serve our kids breakfast and lunch at school. Prior to that, it was in the late 90s when they did the last big renovation on Lincoln. So I'm here to tell you that I haven't looked this up yet, and I'm sure I'm accurate when I say out of the 430 districts in the state of Wisconsin, I'll bet there's less than this, how many fingers I have here, that have not asked for capital improvement monies during that time. And I will say this, perhaps we should have, because we're looking at a mountain right now. And what some districts do is they just sort of look at it, 10 in a 10-year plan. What is it that they're going to need to do capital improvement wise to sort of maintain a level of spending, not only through their checkbook, but also what they might need to ask for. There have been capital referendums flying all around the region and the area, as you well know. Mishicot and Sheboygan are in the midst. It'll be interesting to watch how those turn out in November. But the bottom line is, getting beyond these real emergency room type needs and critical needs that we have, we're going to get to a point where we probably will need to ask the public for some bricks and mortar investments into our school system. When my kids were little, my dad bought one of those battery operated trucks, which was a good idea for the kids to drive around in, I'm sure. But one time we were in the UP, and my son's standing on the back of that truck, and his cousin gunned it, and he fell off, and he injured himself. I thought he either broke his collarbone or broke his arm. Well, what did I do? Saturday, I took my son to the ER to get x-rays. Couldn't wait till Monday. Folks, there are some projects in our district that required immediate attention. We're calling those critical maintenance needs. These are things that can't wait till Monday. These things don't require much debate, discussion, input. These are leaky roofs. These are making buildings safer. These are things on that 1 to 2 list that we really need to get going on. Here's some examples, and we're already on this because we have money in Fund 46, that savings account, to look at the replacement of a 70,000 square foot chunk of Lincoln's roof, which needs replacing badly. We're also having a conversation about some other things at Lincoln High School that need to be addressed. In addition to that, there's tech ed HVAC issues, dust collection. These are just some examples around the district of what we're calling to be critical maintenance. Jefferson, actually our newest school in the bunch, I put that on here because I want you to understand that even in our newest of new schools, we have things that require attention. And there's some things on here dealing with simple things like asphalt and concrete, to safety and security improvements in the main entrance, and traffic and pedestrian safety, to the fact that there needs to be caulking, control joints, masonry, tuck pointing also done in that building, even though it's relatively new. Some more critical maintenance. This happens to be Franklin School. Again, I'm not having examples from every school in the district on here, but know that there are projects like this in every school. Just trying to give you a sense of what I mean when we're talking about critical maintenance. Excuse me. That's kind of sums up sort of where we are with things. Now I want to talk to you briefly about what our next steps are. I've met with every school staff. I have my last one actually this afternoon in about an hour at Washington Middle School. And then I will have completed my circuit, so to speak, with all the buildings, been in 10 buildings, did one community presentation, recording this presentation so it can be shared out with anyone that you'd want to share it with. The bottom line is that the critical maintenance need to be addressed. So my team and I are working on a recommendation that we are going to bring through the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting of the Board of Education next month, to hopefully have a special meeting at the end of November. I believe it's the 26th, where we would have come out of that committee, hopefully, with a recommendation to the board of what to do about our most emergent and immediate needs. At the same time, we want to begin planning long range for how we need to address some of these other issues that impact not only our operational costs, but also our footprint in the district through our buildings and what we might need. But in order to do that, we have to have dialogue with our community and our stakeholders. Therefore, once the recommendation, whatever the board decides to do about our emergent needs in the month of November, the plan is that December I'm focused on forming 2 special facility advisory groups. One of these committees will be made up of members from all of our schools who will have representation on this, more of a staff-based facilities group. Pardon me. The second team that I plan on creating is a community-based facility advisory group. Following our meeting on the 23rd, I've had at least a dozen people reach out with interest in serving on that. I can't promise every single person who wants to be on this committee that they're going to get on it, but we'll find a way to gather interest and then make decisions on, what's the ideal number of people to move through and facilitate this with. Keeping in mind that all citizens are going to be asked their opinions on these things when we send out the survey. We're having a survey being put together right now that we plan on sending out to our entire community in January of 2025. It takes about 8 weeks to get those results back. So we're really hoping that those advisory groups can begin their work in January, start studying the reports and getting some of the data just basically from the study that we did with CISA 10. And then we're hoping to add to that in March with the community input data. I'll have these 2 advisory groups working independently throughout those spring and summer months, really with the hope that, I don't really honestly know how long it will take, But I do know that we'll have the data available for those groups to come up with different options that they think are viable and good recommendations that we could provide the Board of Education when we're talking about our long-term plans for our school buildings, our footprint, consolidation, and all of those issues. You know, nice to have versus gotta haves and all of those things. We want to make sure that we have a really good pulse of where the community is before we begin to make decisions. The goal would be when the committees are through with their work that I would merge the two committees to essentially present to each other what their findings were and what their recommendations were and why. Um, Perhaps there will be consensus around what to do, but perhaps the groups will be in different places. But I think it'll provide us then with an opportunity to come together as school staff and community to discuss what those proposals will look like and how we get to consensus to bring some specific options. Not that the options all have to align, but that the board would have some things to consider as we move forward. Because as I'll remind you, the plan would be that if we were able to get our act together here, so to speak, and get some projects ready to go for the summer months of next year, we would be taking care of some of those critical maintenance needs meanwhile, we're having these conversations about the long-term plans of the district. So that would really be my hope, is that we're not only jumping on things that we need to take care of and they can't wait till Monday. And then we would, at the same time, we would also be doing our planning and getting input for what we would do moving forward to the future. Um, I would say to entertain any questions, which is usually what I do. What I would say is if you do have questions, please always feel free to reach out to me or any members of our team to get you answers. I'd also love to hear from you if you have feedback about this presentation or about interest in serving in the community committee. You'll hear more about that as we roll into December and begin to assemble that group. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention that you took to watch this informational session. And I'm hopeful that you leave it with a little bit better understanding of some of the opportunities and challenges that face the Manitowoc Public School District. I'd like to again thank you, and I appreciate any feedback that you can provide me and our district as we move forward. Take care, and I hope you have a fantastic holiday season coming up.